UFC Noche 3 takes place this upcoming weekend. And while the main event is a fun one between Gene Silva and Diego Lopes, this isn't your grandpa's Noche card. Okay. This is not comparable to what we got last year at the Sphere, where we had two championship bouts topping that card off. Of course, the main event between Sugar Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili. We had the co-headliner of Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso, which was also the headliner for Noche 1. The Noche 1 event was much more comparable to this one, even though they had the championship bout. You have an asterisk next to that because it was a females championship fight. But, I was hoping that the UFC was going to keep that same energy that they brought us last year, and this was going to be more of an annual thing, and it does not seem to be the case because this card, not to rain on your guys' parade, you look at the depth of it, and it's very shallow. The belly of this event is filled with fighters they're fringe UFC fighters. And some of those bouts may actually turn out to be very entertaining, but from a skill standpoint, this card is lacking quite a bit. But it'll be a fun one. And you guys know what we're here for, man. We're here to dissect each and every single one of these fights. We're going to break them down. We're going to dissect the betting odds. If you're new to the show, please smash that subscribe button. And if you guys can all smash the like button, it means the world to me. Go follow me on my social media. And if you guys want my official targets, you guys know the routine. You guys can reach out to me and I'll give you further details there. Now, to that headliner match between Gene Silva and Diego Lopes, I just want to say this. We have much more clarity to what's going on in the featherweight division right now. The last time we kind of talked about this fight, we briefly touched upon it. And I stated that if Gene Silva were to go out here and have a fantastic performance, there was potential that he could be fighting for the belt next. Since I talked about that, Leroy Murphy goes out there and lands one of the craziest knockouts that we've ever seen. And that was really the only thing you could have said negatively about Murphy, was that sometimes he's not the best fight finisher, and some of his fights could be boring at times. He's an extraordinary fighter. He's very technical. The rumors are Volkanovski and Murphy are going to be fighting in December. Volkanovski has even called Murphy out, right? He's calling for that fight. He's the champion. So I would be shocked if Murphy were to get surpassed by Silva, no matter what Silva does out here. They would be doing him dirty. Murphy now has about 10 fights in the UFC. He's 9-1 with a draw, 9 wins with the one draw there. And on the other hand, Gene Silva, if he were to win this fight, I think then if you include his Dana White's Contender Series bout, he'd be 7-0. And Murphy's just been around for a while, and you can't surpass him there. So what I believe is at stake for the main event here is the winner of this fight. Let's say Gene Silva gets the job done, but even if Diego Lopes does it, you could then see them matched up with Movsar Evloev for a number one contenders bout, right? The winner of that bout would probably face the winner of Murphy and Volkanovski. All right. So that's kind of what I see going on right now in the featherweight division. And, but I'll leave you guys with that and we'll jump into the first fight. Let's get to it. At just 21 years old, Santiago Luna steps in on short notice to take on Quang Lee. Lee was supposed to be facing off with David Martinez, but Martinez now gets the Rob Font fight up towards the top of this event after Raul Rosas Jr. did withdraw. Luna, a promising youngster, he still has a lot to prove. This is a fighter that has wrestling credentials. He's a national champ down in Mexico, and he shows to have pretty decent power in his hands. But again, from an overall standpoint, he is lacking quite a bit technically. Even when we've seen Luna go out there and showcase his developing boxing and the power that he possesses, you're also seeing him being landed on. All right, he's a fighter that relies on his chin and his toughness. He marches through damage to land on you, and it's worked good for him so far. But as he climbs up the ladder, you got to be cautious with that because he's there to be hit. Now, Quang Lee, he's really not that guy. I'm not super impressed with his striking, especially as far as his power goes. I will say he's the more technical overall striker. I kind of feel comfortable saying that because he mixes in the kicking game a lot more so. He's more seasoned. But from a straight power standpoint, I would say that it's actually the youngster Luna that would be more likely to land a knockout with his hands. And that's also highlighted by the fact that we've seen Quang Lee recently KO'd in brutal fashion, right? He got finished up in the third round by Xiao Long. And then if you also want to scroll a little bit down, you can go to his fight over in the LFA against Tong where he ended up getting the KO in the first round, but he was hurt early on as they were exchanging. So there's just been signs of him being wobbled and hurt a lot more so than the youngster. But again, the youngster also hasn't been tested there. So take that for what you will. But the durability, I'm going to lean towards Luna's way. Before we jump over to the grappling aspect of this fight, it's important to also note that Luna has been fighting up in the featherweight division. And now he's coming down to the bantamweight division, taking this fight on short notice. I'm curious to see how the weight cut goes for him. And also, he brings in a size advantage. I guess you can feel comfortable to say that he'll be the larger fighter in there, but we'll pay attention to how they look as they hit the scales and they face off the day before the fights. When it comes to the grappling, I mentioned that Luna is a national champ. I don't think his credentials really run that deep, though. I wouldn't be jumping out of your seat, but he has a wrestling ability. When you watch him in the cage, you'll see him go for a lot of tosses and throws, and he does put himself out there to be reversed the way that he'll recklessly look to throw you. And Lee's a fighter that has decent grappling. We've seen him have success in the octagon with his grappling. You think about the Chris Gutierrez fight that he took on short notice. He looked good there. And then you think about his first ever victory in the UFC, that much needed W that he just had. That was a fight where he went out there and submitted Gaston Bolanos, the kickboxer. All right. So we know he has pretty decent jiu-jitsu, and I'm interested to see how they would fare off down in the mat. And I would actually favor the veteran's way in Lee. It could be close, but I think that Lee will be a little bit more composed and his jiu-jitsu will be a little bit more high level. With that being said, though, I've really liked what I've seen from Luna down on the mat as well. Besides just throwing his opposition around, he's quick to jump on your back. You see out of his 6 victories, he has 4 subs, and he's all over these fighters' backs. He'll lock in and he'll hit you with the rear naked choke. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that to a fighter like Lee, though. And the fact that Lee was planning for this date, right? He was preparing to fight on the night while Luna takes this fight on short notice. That's another key factor that's going to have me lean, very slightly leaning towards Quang Lee's way. And take a look at some of this line movement. You might not be able to see it over here in the corner, but Lee did open up right around a minus 135, and he is now currently a minus 190 as we're about a week out or so from these fights, a little less than a week out from the fights. And I'm curious to see where this line settles. There seems to be a lot of confidence in Lee here, and I think people are leaning on his experience for him to get the job done here, and the fact that Luna is so young, he's 21 years old, and they feel that Lee should be able to go out here and expose him quite a bit. But I'm not so sure that's the case. I think that this is a closer fight than Lee being a minus 190, and I think that right now the value's on the underdog where this line stands right now. I have Lee capped more as, I would say, more as a minus 145 or so, just to put things into consideration there for you. If we see a finish, I think that it would be Luna landing a KO, while I'll lean more towards Lee winning a decision. I don't know if he pulls off a sub down there. And my final call will be Lee to win via decision. Another young, talented fighter gets a short notice opportunity, as we have here Alden Cobra Coria, who represents the 4-ounce Fight Club. He'll be getting a massive step up in competition as he takes on Alessandro Costa, who was preparing for this date. Costa had a couple fights fall through, and that has opened up this opportunity for Coria. I've really enjoyed breaking down tape on Coria, and I also have enjoyed listening to his interviews. I get a lot of Brandon Royval vibes from him. Right? He's laid back outside the cage, but when he's in there, he's an absolute tornado, and he looks to take you out. He's a fight finisher. Half of his finishes come by way of sub, half of them come by way of KO/TKO, and he's coming into this fight realistically on a 4-fight winning streak, with all of them coming by way of finish. This fight over here against Paris Moran was overturned, but that fight initially was a KO there. And I mean, this kid is aggressive. Now, I talked about liking his personality too. I mean, this is somebody that has been dreaming and aspiring to fight in the UFC since he was about 13. He's been preparing for this moment, and all he wants to do is be able to feed his family by fighting inside the UFC. So the hunger is there. But the elephant in the room, without a doubt, is the fact that he already has 3 losses that took place to lower level fighters. All right, I would feel comfortable saying that all 3 of these fighters that he's taken losses to are nowhere near the level of a Costa, who is a dangerous fighter. Now, you also take into consideration that he's growing and he's getting better and he's bringing some momentum into this fight. But at the end of the day, like I said, Costa is a different animal. I'm high in him. This is a fighter that can go out there and chop your legs down. He has nasty leg kicks. His hands are heavy. He can knock you out. As of recently, we just saw him finish Kevin Borjas with those. Well, eventually he finished him on the mat, but he really set a lot of that damage up through chopping his legs up. Okay, he's had some losses. Steve Urseg and Amir Albazi. These are top 10 fighters in this weight class. But the Albazi loss was a little alarming for the fact that he was finished via strikes by a fighter that's more known for his grappling in Albazi. And that just highlights the potential that this youngster can go out there and potentially touch him up and hurt him. I mean, the chin has been tested. He was brutally KO'd in that fight. And the mix of those losses, he finishes Jimmy Flick, destroyed Flick, and you watch his tape on the regional scene. I mean, he's a dangerous, dangerous fighter. He's had some big time highlight KOs. He's a little, I'm not going to say undersized. I'm not going to say that. He's a little bit more stout. He's a little bit more compact, if you will, but he's built like a little tank. So even though Coria may be longer here, I would expect Costa to be physically stronger. So we'll see how that plays out. And Coria will come forward. He will be very aggressive. Costa is not shy in there as well. So this is a fight that should really deliver. I think that the crowd will be going crazy. This is going to be one of the more entertaining fights on the card. I like this kid Coria, but how can I pick him against Costa right now as he takes this fight on short notice and the lights are going to be shining bright on him? I can't pick him. But I also will say this: he's taking this fight about on 6 weeks short notice, and he says that that's plenty of time. He says that that's plenty of time for him to prepare. So he feels confident that he's ready for this opportunity, but I'm not so sure that that he's going to be able to get his hand raised against Costa. I think Costa gets the job done here. I think that we may see Costa pull off a submission, which he hasn't done for a long time, but he used to do very often back in the day. And now it's been him going out there just looking to brutalize you with strikes. But maybe we see him set something up down in the mat with some ground and pound, and maybe you see a rear naked choke or something like that open up. He has a nasty armbar as well. So maybe he just shows to be on another level and he finds that sub. I guess I'll stick with the submission call. Wouldn't be surprised if this fight ends up going to a decision based on the fact that Alden is very tough and has never been finished via strikes this far. So maybe he makes it to the final bell if the fight plays out like that and it's a striking affair. Now we take a look at the money line. Costa is as high as a minus 350 right now. I think that the value's in the dog here. Well, with him being as high as a plus 285, 290, I think that this line is just a little bit too wide for me when you watch how aggressive and dangerous this youngster is. And we've seen Costa put out before. So even though this is a flyweight bout, we've seen Costa KO'd in an awkward type of situation. And I wouldn't be shocked if that happened here. And I wouldn't be shocked if this fight just plays out very closely and it's tit for tat. So do I want to be chalking up minus 350? No, I don't. I like Costa a lot, but I'm a little wary of that line. Prison Fights 3. Sedriques Dumas takes on Zachary Reese. On a serious note, these two fighters were supposed to face off at the beginning of this year. The fight never came to fruition due to the fact that Dumas was having issues outside of the cage. He had to withdraw from that bout. Since that time, Dumas did make the walk to the octagon. I was there live for the fight where he was finished up by Michal Oleksiejczak. He was finished up rather quickly. Since the time that they were supposed to fight, Reese has gone 1-1, with his loss coming by way of Azamet Bukoyev, who is proving to be nothing less than a threat to the division. So it does. I mean, it looked bad the way he was finished up, but we know Bukoyev is a talented fighter, and he followed that loss up with a decision victory over Duško Todorović. And sneak peek here, or I'll give you a little hint here to an answer to a question. But a lot of people have been saying that this fight here is a matchup between two of the most low-level middleweight fighters on the roster. If you hang around with me, maybe we'll find even a better option for a matchup between two even lower-level middleweight fighters. All right, and I did give you a little hint at what the answer was there. But, to this matchup here, what I haven't liked from Dumas is the fact that when he has been losing these fights as of recently, even though Oleksiejczak's a high-level fighter and so is Ruzaboyev, it's the way he's getting finished. He kind of almost looks like he's giving up. And I don't like that because at least in Reese's case, when he's getting finished by a fighter like Bukoyev, I mean, he is getting brutalized, right? He's getting brutalized. The Cody Brundage loss as well. He is getting flatlined. Okay, so I haven't seen any give up in him while I'm seeing that from Dumas. And if Dumas doesn't flatline Reese here, I think that Reese is going to have more heart in this fight. And Reese is also dangerous. Okay. He'll hurt you. He'll look to throw the kitchen sink at you. And I can see Dumas kind of looking for a way out early in this fight. Okay. And that's actually going to be my official prediction on how this fight goes. I think that Reese will get Dumas out early. Reese has nasty striking. He's huge for this weight class. And he also has shown some submission skills. He doesn't have a lot of subs on his resume, but remember what he did on Dana White's Contender Series. I mean, he has some submission ability. I think that he just shows up here. He's more dedicated, and I think that he gets his hand raised. Now, as we slide over to the betting odds, which Reese is a pretty big favorite, and I'm not in agreement with that line. This is another fight that I'm not in agreement, and I'll just elaborate on why that's the case. Reese is not a trustworthy fighter. He's not a trustworthy fighter, and you could argue that Dumas is a little bit more technical than him, even though he has his own issues. And if Reese just makes one mistake, not only does he lose this fight, he is probably sleeping in the cage. So, I mean, do I feel comfortable backing Zachary Reese, where he opened up as a minus 300? You see it, you can't see it over here to the left. He opened up as a minus 300, and now he's a minus 275. So, understandably so, the line's coming down, but I still don't feel comfortable backing him as a minus 275. I don't. He's had some interesting lines next to his name at times, and this is one where the value's on the underdog. If you were playing the long haul, you'd bet on the dog here, but I think that the most likely outcome is that Reese finds a finish in this fight, and I'm hoping that's the case. You guys know I'm a fan of his. I hope that he puts it together and can continue to hold on to a roster spot, but if he keeps going out there and getting flatlined, the game's going to catch up to him quick, and he'll be performing somewhere else. So this is a big fight for both men. If Dumas loses this has to be the end of the road. I'm surprised that the UFC has even let him hang around as long as he has with all the issues he has outside of the cage. I'm assuming that there's some kind of connection there, and they're trying to work with him and give him a second chance at this thing, because I think a lot of other fighters would be cut by now. So I told you I would pull up an even lower level middleweight matchup. Here it is. Jose Medina takes on Duško Todorović. And if you want to argue with me, which is the lower level bout, meet me in the comment section. And, I got some strong evidence to make my case. First off, Zachary Reese just defeated Duško Todorović. So Zachary Reese is a step ahead of Duško, and Jose Medina is quite possibly the worst fighter. I mean, maybe I'm pushing it, but he's one of the worst fighters on the UFC roster. And listen, I'm not opposed to watching him step into the cage. He's very, very tough. We saw that on full display on Dana White's Contender Series. I mean, he's a walking punching bag, but he was finally KO'd by Ateba Gatier, and not that any of us were surprised there. I mean, Ateba is an animal, and I don't care how tough and durable you think you are. You can't just walk through the striking of Ateba's, and we just saw him finally KO'd here. So he comes into this fight off a KO. Do I think that Duško Todorović, oh, and by the way, Zachary Reese also has a victory over the Bolivian Medina here as well. So to make my case even stronger. But do I think that Duško can get a finish on Medina? I mean, it's not out of the realm, but I don't see it happening. I don't. But I do think that Duško will be a step ahead. I think that his striking offensively is more refined. He has more tricks to pull out here to get the job done. So yeah, I will pick him to win this fight. On the contrary, we have seen him KO'd pretty bad as of recently. So you got to be a little cautious there. But I don't think Medina is going to put him out. I'll just mention the Abdul Malik fight. He was KO'd. He was injured against CLD. Chidi Njokuani KO'd him. So, I mean, there's been some issues going on with him. And this is a fighter, and Duško, that I'm very surprised to see that he still has a UFC roster spot, dating back to when he fought on Dana White's Contender Series, where he was the headliner of that. I think that was season 1 back in 2019, right? The Teddy Ash fight. He was the headliner, and he was all hyped up. He was finishing fights coming into that fight. He was actually coming in off a victory over Michel Pereira. And he just held Teddy Ash up against the cage for the entirety of that fight. And since the UFC has signed him, first off, look at the level of victory that he has. Daquan Townsend, Maki Patolo, and Jordan Wright. I would say, as far as 3 victories inside the UFC, that's about as low level as it gets. So, I mean, he's unproven, but that's how bad Medina is, that I still think that Duško is a clear step ahead of him. And you look at the stats here. Look at Medina's stats. He is landing 2.18 strikes per minute while absorbing 5.25. I mean, it's really bad. Duško, not a great ratio, but at least he's in the plus, landing a little bit more than he's absorbing. But he's the better fighter. He's the more complete fighter. He has some grappling to go to as well. And you got to go Duško. I will say Duško wins this fight via decision. And we saw Duško open up right around a minus 210. And again, I apologize. We'll have this fixed. I know you guys can't see where these lines are opening up here. But he opened up right around a minus 210. And this line is coming down. He's now a minus 300. We're seeing action come in on him. And it's warranted. It's what I would expect. And even where he's at now, he's a minus 300. Now, I'm not going to say that there's a great amount of value on that line, but the movement is accurate. He should be a pretty solid favorite here. And even though I'm not high on him, this is a solid matchup for him. And maybe you want to just take him to win this fight via decision. Or maybe you throw it in a parlay. But Duško, he should get the job done here, man. Medina is low level. In the flyweight division, Luis Gurule looks to bounce back with the victory as he comes in off a brutal KO loss that he took by Ode Osborne. He's taken on Jesus Aguilar. Aguilar, he has one of the best guillotines in the game right now. Okay, now, as far as his complete game goes, it's not really on the level, but his guillotine is nasty, and we saw that on full display against Stuart Nickel, who is a young, up-and-coming prospect in this division. And what a mistake that was for Stuart to stick his head in there. But we've seen Aguilar pulling off that guillotine for a long time, dating back to well before he was even working with the UFC. I mean, you look at the Edgar Suarez submission victory that took place with just 19 seconds left to go in the fight. All right, I mean, the guillotine is always live to be locked on. So you have to pay attention to that here because Gurule, who has some grappling abilities, he has a big old watermelon head, and if he gets cocky and he plays that game, the guillotine is 100% live. Now, you also have to mention or circle back to the fact that he's coming into this fight off of a brutal KO loss, the first time that he was ever KO'd. And Aguilar, I'm not going to say that he's a knockout artist, but he has displayed that he will throw a big overhand right at you, as we saw him do to the Australian Shannon Ross. Now, Ross was in the mix of, I forget exactly where it was chronologically, but he went on like a 5-fight losing skid, getting knocked out in all those fights. So take that one for what you will. But if you're Gurule, just don't go out there and throw caution to the wind and leave that chin up there like you did last time. Okay, you need to be a little bit more technically sound defensively. If you do that and you don't make any mistakes, you're the superior fighter. I think that if this fight goes to the judges' scorecards, it should go Gurule's way, right? And Gurule has the grappling and the wrestling. He's very tough. He's not easy to be taken down. We saw that against Nick Piccinini on Dana White's Contender Series. He was stuffing takedowns, and he's a fighter. Okay, he's going to march forward. He's going to hit you with strikes from all kinds of awkward angles. And I think that he will be the fighter that's pushing the pace and throwing more combinations with his striking. Aguilar doesn't really showcase that to me. I don't see him being a real combination thrower. And as the fight progresses, I just don't see him keeping up with the pace of Gurule. Gurule's there, tit for tat on the striking. He's going to look for those big power punches. He's going to look for that one big moment. And I wouldn't want to be backing Aguilar as you're waiting for that moment to happen. If it happens, great. It'll be spectacular. The crowd will go crazy if he snatches that guillotine or if he lands that overhand right. But tit for tat, Gurule is going to be in his face. Gurule is going to be outpointing him. And Gurule, you take a look out of his 10 victories, 5 of them come by way of KO. You pull up his highlight reel. I mean, he has some wild KOs. There was one where he threw out a back fist, not a spinning back fist, just a back fist. Kind of just like flicked his hand out there in an awkward way. So, I mean, he'll throw some wild stuff at you. He has power behind him. With that being said, Aguilar has never been KO'd, and he seems to be pretty damn durable. I'm going to favor this fight going the distance here. I think that Gurule gets his hand raised. I'll say that this is going to be a unanimous decision victory for Gurule. We'll see if Aguilar can try to keep it competitive, but I'll lean more towards Gurule being a step ahead as the fight progresses. And we take a look at the odds here. Another fight where we have interesting and quick line movement as Gurule opened up as a minus 350. And now this line's coming down. He's a minus 200. So the action's coming in on Aguilar. And that kind of makes sense too, because he shouldn't be opening up as a minus 350, or he shouldn't be a minus 350 favorite. This fight is closer than that, as he comes in off the KO loss. But I mean, now with him being a minus 200 favorite, I do feel that the value is on him. And I probably have him capped somewhere around being a minus 220, just over a minus 200 favorite. So, I mean, now you may be talking about having a bargain there. It's just, you got to put some faith into Guriel's chin being there, and that he has his wits back to him and he's ready to go. Because if he does, he's a tough fighter, or he's a real fighter, and he'll come forward and he'll be the fighter inflicting damage, and he's pretty well rounded. So I'll say he wins the decision here. The value's on his line. Hey, you guys, just want to take a second to tell you I appreciate you for tuning in. If you guys could take a second to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new, it helps me out greatly. It allows me to take this thing to another level. So thank you guys for just smashing that button real quick. Back to the show. Tatiana Suarez looks to redeem herself after falling flat on her face in that failed title shot against Weili Zhang. To make things worse, Patchy Mix makes his UFC debut and looks horrendous. He actually had quite possibly one of the worst debut performances when you take into consideration the anticipation. I mean, it's at least up there towards the top when you mix into the fact of the expectations. So, I mean, there's a lot on the line here as she takes on Amanda Lemos. Suarez, we know her wrestling and grappling is very elite, but if she can't get the fight down there or keep the fight down there, she's going to be in trouble when it comes to her striking. Her striking, it's lower level. And on the other hand, Amanda Lemos is a higher caliber striker. But when you're talking about the entirety of women's mixed martial arts, Amanda Lemos can crack. She's a dangerous striker. So in my opinion, you definitely look at this fight like that. This is a striker versus wrestler, striker versus grappler. That's what we're talking about here. Now, Amanda Lemos, interestingly enough, at 38 years old, right, she comes into this bout off of one of her more impressive performances as far as her grappling goes. You could tell that she's been putting in work there, right? In that match against Yasmin Lucindo, she actually took her down 3 times on 5 attempts and controlled Lucindo for almost 8 minutes in that fight, right? It was impressive. It was crafty, right? That's not typically how Lemos fights. We always kind of looked at her as this one-dimensional striker, and at 38 to make those adjustments against a young fighter in Lucindo, I thought that was very impressive. Now, I'm still not going to completely overlook some of the mishaps that she's had in the cage when it comes to her grappling, because when things don't go good for her, she does get finished. She gets subbed. You think about the John D. Roba fight, the Jessica Andrade submission loss where she was caught in a standing arm triangle up against the cage. I mean, that was a weird one there, to get caught in a sub like that against Andrade. I mean, I think that it's very realistic that Tatiana can pull off something wild like that as well, because she's dangerous with her grappling. You could also mention the Leslie Smith knockout loss. I mean, she's had these mishaps, but you know, as you scroll through, all in all, there's been more ups than downs. Okay, you could mention some respectable victories. You know, knocking out Marina Rodriguez. We mentioned the Lucindo victory, decisioning Dern. Okay, how about pulling off a decision against Dern there, not getting subbed by a very high caliber jiu-jitsu player there. She submitted Michelle Watterson, an older Watterson, but still she decisioned Angela Hill. I mean, there's some things to talk about here, and I do believe that she is somewhat of a threat to Suarez here, but I'm not ready to turn the page on Suarez like that just yet. I'm not. Okay, she's 34 years old. She doesn't have an extreme amount of mileage. Now, I know she has a lot of injuries on her body. She's had a lot of injuries on her body throughout the years, but she just has 11 fights. And if her mind is there, which I believe it is, I'm sure her and Patchy are so dedicated to get back into the cage and get their hands raised. And they have a lot of talent. So if they just get the ball rolling, I mean, they should go back to having success. And I know she came up short against Weili. Weili is truly one of the GOATs of women's mixed martial arts, and I cannot wait to see her against Valentina Shevchenko, another fellow GOAT of women's mixed martial arts. What a fight that's going to be. But I mean, look at some of the names that are on Suarez's resume when you actually dive into it. I mean, the Andrade submission, Andrade submits Lemos, a little MMA math there for you. But I mean, you have big, very respectable names in Carla Esparza and Alexa Grasso. So I mean, there's not a lengthy resume to talk about, but the performances have been dominant. I understand she's lacking though. She is lacking with her striking, and if she cannot, I'll repeat, if she cannot get this fight down to the mat, or if she cannot consistently get this fight down to the mat, and you see Lemos bouncing back up and then having extended periods of time take place on the feet, I think that Suarez is going to be in trouble. I do believe that for sure. And not only can she lose the decision, but you may see a type of situation where she's beaten up and she's TKO'd in an ugly type of way. I mean, Lemos has power. She has real Muay Thai skills. I don't expect that to happen. I think that Suarez is going to be all over her and she'll get those takedowns. This is a 3-round fight. I don't think that she's going to gas out the same way that she did against Zhang. I don't think that she'll have as much pushback. And I think that Suarez bounces back with the victory here. And I'm going to say that she actually pulls off the submission. I'm going to say she does that. I'm going to say she hits a rear naked choke, maybe a standing arm triangle against the cage. But we're talking big numbers here. Suarez opened up around a minus 285 favorite, and now she's up in the minus 400s. I don't trust her. I don't trust her at that line. I'm sorry, I don't. I like her to win this fight, but I'm not coughing up minus 400, a minus 400 type of line. I'm just not doing it. Maybe I would target her to win this fight specifically by submission or inside the distance. Maybe I can get some value there, but I don't think that it's worth it to target her at this line. You know, part of me wants to say there's still some value on it because she's the superior fighter and she's going to come in hungry and she's going to dominate like she has in the past. But it's just that Lemos has looked good up there in age. She comes in physically fit and she knows what the recipe is as well. She just needs to stuff those takedowns and she's been working on that grappling. So the value's in the dog here, in my opinion. But I'll say that Suarez gets a second round submission. We have Peru versus Brazil as Claudio Puelles takes on Joaquim Silva in the lightweight division. Both of these fighters haven't been in the cage in about a year and a half. The last time we saw Puelles in there was when he took that split decision loss to Faraz Ziam. And that was a fight that a lot of people actually thought that he lost 30-27. He was going the grappling route. Ziam was looking to outland him, which he did for sure. He outstruck him 58-17, but Puelles had about 7 minutes and 14 seconds of control time. We know that his jiu-jitsu is pretty nasty, specifically with his leg lock game, right? If you make a mistake, he'll end the fight quickly with a knee bar, but his overall jiu-jitsu is pretty good as well. And I expect him to show some growth since the last time that we saw him in there, right? He's a young fighter. He's just 29 years old. I know he's been putting in a lot of work with the UFC broadcast team for the Spanish side of things and all that. But even with that, I'm expecting that he's putting in a lot of work in the gym, and I think that we'll see his striking continue to sharpen up a little bit. Now, I don't know if he's going to win a straight-up striking affair with Joaquim Silva, but even though Silva's bread and butter is his Muay Thai skills, he's had some questionable performances as of recently. I really didn't like how he looked in the Jakar close bout, right? He dropped close in the third round, but he was so lethargic and had no real urgency to him in the beginning portion of that fight. And that's what I didn't like about that. And I think that fight even took place in Brazil. He had the crowd behind him. And I just didn't like the way that he looked. I think there were some signs pointing towards him aging. Before that, he had the victory over Guida. And Guida, a common opponent of Puelles. Puelles finished him there. And he was able to make it to the third round against Arman Sarukian. You can give him some credit for surviving some of the onslaught early on down in the map. But, he was broken down eventually. The Ricky Glenn loss was a very tough one. He was knocked out by Ricky Glenn, Nasrat Hakparast. The highlight of his career was when he finished Jared Gordon. I mean, that was truly the highlight of his career. He's been very inactive, which you can look at as a positive or a negative because he's older but doesn't have as much mileage on him. But he just never really got the ball rolling. And to be completely transparent with you guys, I've been very back and forth with who I was going to take here. In fact, I was back, forth, and now I'm back to Claudio Puelles. And what really did it for me is the youth that he has going for himself. I think he takes some steps forward here, and he already has the grappling to go with that developing striking. And I don't know if Joaquim Silva is going to be able to do what Dan Hooker did to him. And I don't know that Puelles is the same fighter that he was when he was in there against Hooker. So I'm going to say that Puelles gets the job done. I'm going to say he pulls off the sub. It's not easy to do. In fact, Silva's only been subbed once throughout his career, and that was before he joined the UFC. right? So it's not going to be easy. I'll call the sub for Puelles because he's that tricky with it, but I feel comfortable just backing him here. Which, if you're taking him on the money line, you're getting him at plus odds. So, I mean, you could just take him straight up, but that's up to you. Maybe you even get better value, so it's worth it for you. But I like the dog here in Puelles. Now, you're going to want to get familiar with this name here, Alice Pereira, right? She's going to be the youngest female mixed martial artist to have ever made a UFC debut. She is not the sister of Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira's sister is Aileen Pereira. The names are very close. Aileen is about 34 years old, and there's no signs of her working her way into the UFC. She's more active in the striking world. This girl, Elise, is going to have a very bright future. You're going to be watching her fight in the octagon for a very long time. No matter how this UFC debut performance goes by her, she's going to be fighting in the octagon for a very long time, mark my words. And yes, of course, she's very green and there's a lot that needs to be worked on. That's to be expected, right? She's 19 years old. I mean, she's only had so many years to even put in work in the gym. She's only been alive for so long. She just has 5 professional fights. But when you take into consideration so some of the work that she's already put on tape and the fact that she was 16, 17 years old while she's doing that. And I know it was against lower level talent, but when you see her mixing things up, you understand how high the ceiling is. You take into consideration her frame. She's 5'10". She's very long. She's athletic. She showcases good power, right? She has the personality. She has the confidence. She already feels that she's going to be a UFC champion. She believes that's what her future entails. And you have to love that about her. She called her shot. Okay. She's been in contact with Mick Maynard and the UFC for some time. She's been waiting to get this opportunity. She's already been calling to get a fight in the UFC. So she gets to surpass Dana White's Contender Series. This is a blue chip prospect. And like I said earlier, we'll see how this fight plays out for her, but things will iron out down the line. And when she's 28 years old, forget about the talent that she is. And why the UFC likes her so much, besides some of the things I've already mentioned, is that this isn't like a jiu-jitsu specialist. This isn't a fighter that just has a high ceiling, but does it kind of in a more boring way, if you will. Not that we think jiu-jitsu is boring, but you guys know what I'm saying. For the casual fan, this is a fighter that could really be a household name in the game. And they're already putting her face all over posters in Brazil. They feel very confident in her. And you take a look at the matchup that they give her. It's a very winnable matchup. We know Montserrat Rendon is a low-level fighter. She's not particularly dangerous with her striking. Okay, she has some wrestling abilities. We'll talk about that here in a second, but they're not really putting Pereira out there in a vulnerable way. Okay, so I really like the matchmaking here. Rendon comes off the Daria loss, which was a fight that she still had some success with her wrestling, but she was severely outstruck. The fight before that, she took that decision over Vidal using her wrestling. Once again, I do believe that's her strong suit, and if she's going to have success in this fight, she's going to have to try to expose Pereira's grappling and wrestling abilities. But I'll tell you what, I think that's going to be a tall task for Rendon. Pereira is large. She's very tall. And I don't know if she's going to be able to get in on her and get that lift to put her down. But besides that, Pereira is very aggressive. I expect her to be marching forward, looking to land her own offense, which is going to stifle the grappling attack of Rendon. And Pereira mixes in a lot of knees, okay, with her offense. She has a diverse amount of offensive weapons for her age. Okay, for her age, and I like what we're seeing from her. And I think that her aggression, the knees mixed in with the nice hands that she possesses, she throws a nice 1-2-3. She really likes to rely on that 1-2, and she'll throw in the little hook at the end of it. And I think that she's gonna land damage on Rendon in that fashion, and it's just gonna it's gonna ruffle Rendon's feathers, and I think that it's gonna throw her game off. Now we'll probably see Rendon get in on a couple singles or something like that, but I think that Pereira can defend. And even if she's taken down, well, I mean, we'll see how her get-up game is, but every round is going to start on the feet, and I think that she's just going to put off an ample amount of damage. She's going to solidify rounds, and I'm hoping that she puts it together. She's a fun prospect to watch, and I think that she has a very bright future. But if I'm going to break this down from a betting perspective, as we jump over to the betting odds, okay, where she opened up as a -210, and you see that line coming down. I understand why the line's coming down, because even as promising as she looks for her age, she's unproven. Okay, she's been fighting low-level fighters, and Rendon is a step up in competition, and we really don't know exactly how she's going to look in those wrestling exchanges, right? If the fight goes on to the later rounds, how is she going to look cardio-wise in those grappling situations? I do feel that she will do fine, But do you want to be coughing up minus 200 on her? I wouldn't want to do that. Now, as this line comes down, this is one of those types of lines I would probably be monitoring. If it comes down enough that it's in range, I would love to grab her around a minus 155 or so. And just to take a look at her professional fights, even though a lot of her early work was involved in fights that ended quickly, right? A lot of first round finishes. She went to the second round in her second to last fight. But in that last fight, she went to the championship rounds. Okay. So I do like that for her going into this match here. Okay. She went 25 minutes there, even though it was against a lower level fighter. It's good to see that she got some cage time in. And don't forget, this is the women's bantamweight division. All right. This is a fighter that, even as green as she could just jump right into the mix with her physical traits and her abilities and be very competitive. And in this case, be superior than a Rendon. So I like Alice Pereira. I say that she comes in her debut, gets the job done. I don't think that she's going to find that finish here. With the step up in competition, this will be a fight, in my opinion, that goes to the judges' scorecards, but she'll be out ahead with the damage that she's landing. And I'll say she wins 29-28. Maybe we see one or two judges' scorecards say 30-27, but she'll be out ahead. And I think that she'll defend the wrestling attack of Rendon good enough. I think this match really has a recipe to be a fun fight. Alexander Hernandez makes a quick return back to the octagon. He just went out there and KO'd Chase Hooper. He was a big-time underdog, and he really showed up. And there's a great argument that Hernandez right now is in the prime of his career. Now he takes on Diego Ferreira, who is 40 years old. And now, if you were to give me a prime Diego Ferreira, I'll let you guys know right now, I would definitely be on the Diego side here. I think that his ceiling was much higher than at least what we've seen from Hernandez thus far. We'll see if Hernandez can continue to build and grow on what he's been doing as of recently. The Chase Hooper victory, I would say it was his biggest victory, but you would have to say the UFC debut performance against Beneil Dariush is probably always going to be that for him. But the Hooper victory is probably number two. Okay, that was a big-time W. Now, as good as Chase Hooper has been looking, and you guys know I've been raving about what Chase Hooper has been doing, we still know that his defensive skills on the feet are lacking a bit. Okay, he does a lot of other things well. His defensive skills there are lacking, and props to Hernandez for taking advantage of that. He showcased his physical traits. Hernandez is a great athlete. He has big-time power, and he moves well. But I still have issues with him. Okay, if you give him pushback, I don't like the way he looks at times. Even going back to that Kurt Hollabaugh fight, which a lot of people thought that he lost. The Austin Hubbard fight, that was a fight that a lot of people thought that he lost. When you give him pushback and you're able to stifle some of his offensive attacks and get into his head a bit, okay, you can have success. And I think that Diego has the ability to do that here. Okay, Diego is a very high caliber BJJ player. His striking, it's slick. He carries good power. Right, you look at some of his recent success before taking that L to Dawson, who's a very high level fighter. He went out there, had the comeback victory over Rebecki. He had the, if you want to call it a comeback KO over Johnson. Johnson had some early success, but Ferreira, he waited for his moment. He had another KO there, showcasing that power. Right, the strength of schedule between these two fighters are very different. Ferreira is much more battle tested. Okay, so you can go through some of his losses, but they're against high level fighters. Okay, yes, I know that Dariush is a common opponent that Hernandez went out there and defeated, but I don't know. I still kind of think that KO was a little fluky over Dariush. I think that if Dariush and Hernandez fought many more times, I think that Dariush should be the victor more frequently. But and besides that victory and the Hooper victory, you guys know that I am not impressed with the strength of schedule. I've raved about this before, but I mean, he's even taken questionable losses like against Billy Q, Damon Jackson, Bill Algeo. I know that a lot of those fights were also down in the featherweight division, and he's complaining about the weight cut, and I'm sure there was a lot of merit to that. Right? He does look better at 155, and that probably was affecting him. But I mean, the victories that he's had, Chris Grutzmacher, Mike Breeden. Do I need to go on again about the Francisco Trinaldo fight? I feel like I was just doing this because I just was. So let me cut to the chase here, man. It is a very close fight, and there's a lot of advantages that Hernandez has going into this fight. Being in his prime, the fact that he was just into the cage, he has all this confidence behind him, and his mental has been one of his main issues. And the fact that he was just in there and had that success, that probably is going to translate to him feeling a little bit more confident in there once again and not having too many issues mentally. But you never know with him because he is a head case. And Diego's a fighter that you always know is going to go out there and he's not going to question himself. He's going to go out there and he's going to look to take you out and do whatever he needs to do. And I do like the fact that Diego was just training for a huge event at UFC 319. So it's not like he's just, he's just scrambling for this new date. I'm sure he's been very dedicated and has been in the gym very often here over the past half year. And he was in there in the octagon about 7 months ago. So I think that he'll be game. And I'm sure his striking will look slicker than ever. And I actually believe he'll be live to get the better of the striking as the fight progresses. Hernandez may look more explosive and quick in there early on, and it may move better, but as the fight progresses and things get ugly and you see them slowing down a little bit and it's becoming a war, I think that is where Diego can thrive. And if Hernandez wants to start shooting in on him, that jiu-jitsu is nasty. Okay, if you shoot in on Diego, he'll really make you pay for it, right? Hernandez won't be able to do what he did to Halaba to Diego if Diego starts to have some success as the fight goes on. So this is a very close fight. I've been back and forth with my decision. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh yeah, this is definitely a Diego spot. Okay, he's 40 years old and he's been getting hurt a lot in the cage. Okay, there's some durability questions, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna go with Diego here because I still think that when there's pushback against Hernandez, he's gonna look much more human than he looked against Hooper. Okay, as I like to call him, Trooper. Trooper was not in that fight from the get-go. He was very hesitant and he seemed to be off. Okay, Hernandez, he set the tone and Trooper fell right into it. Diego won't fall into that type of pattern, into that type of fight. So, I mean, it's one thing if Hernandez flatlines him, but as the fight progresses, I think Diego proves to be a step ahead, and I think he has a little bit left to offer the fight game, and he's the underdog. So, yes, I'm going to go with the dog here and Diego Ferreira, and I'm going to say, this is a tough one for me. Can he get a late finish here? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it goes to a decision, but we'll see Hernandez bloodied up, and we'll probably see Ferreira bloodied up. This is going to be a fun fight. It's going to be there's going to be a high pace to it. I think that this is one of the fights that you want to put an asterisk next to. This is going to be very entertaining, and I'm going to say that Diego Ferreira pulls through and wins a decision in a tight one. At 185, Kelvin Gastelum gets a bit of a step down in competition as he's taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Now, don't completely overlook Dustin because even with certain holes that he has in his game, he does bring some danger with him to the octagon. The main issue I have with him is that he's so stiff and robotic. If he had a little bit more athleticism, I think that he would have a much more success in the cage because somehow his striking works for him. And he has some judo skills. He has some grappling skills down in the mat. And he has a solid physique, right? If you were to take a look at both these fighters and you didn't know anything about them, you would probably assume that Dustin would be the superior fighter. Okay, he's built pretty well for this division, but the stiffness is an issue, and it definitely will be an issue here against Kelvin, who moves very fluidly. Now you take a look at some of the more recent work from Dustin. He's coming in off the Rozaboyev loss, and before that, he had the big first round KO over MAB, which was followed up from the Bruno Ferreira fight, where he had early success in that fight before he ran into that spinning back elbow. Once again, just showing that he can be dangerous, right? He kind of hurt Bruno early on in that fight, and before that one, he submitted Punalehi Sariano, who Sariano's really been putting it together, right? So, I mean, there's been a lot of ups and downs. I mean, I could run you through the whole resume here. A lot of win-loss going on. Abbas Mugamedov ran through him in 19 seconds. Okay, there's a lot of fishy and awkward performances. All right, Dwight Grant, if we're going to mention that W, we'll mention it really quickly. And then you think about how his UFC career kicked off after he got signed, or I don't even think he got signed, right? He had the victory over Joe Pyfer due to the injury as Pyfer tried to post and his arm dislocated. He went 0-3 in his first 3 fights in the UFC before getting that W against Grant. And essentially, right, he was 1-4 in his first 5 fights in the octagon. But you take a look at the level of competition, it's not horrible, but he just continuously would fall short as the fights would progress and as they would go on. He would make these mental mistakes in there, right? The GM3 sub, the Rodolfo Vieira sub. It's like we were expecting him to kind of run the gas tank of Vieira's out, and then somehow Vieira was the fighter that looked much sharper as that fight made it to the 3rd round. And I think that actually was more due to the fact that Vieira was taking that next step in his game. Right, we had all these major question marks about his cardio because of the Fluffy loss, but now we know in retrospect that Fluffy is just him. You know what I mean? So, and when you're talking Kelvin, I don't think that he's your typical fighter that's hitting his prime at the prime age of 33. I don't see that urgency from him in the cage. Yes, you could look at the Pyfer fight and say he looked pretty decent because everyone thought that Pyfer was just going to run through him or just dominate that fight. And Pyfer was very hesitant. But Kelvin was pretty hesitant too. He didn't look to solidify and take that fight. Right? He's been kind of laid back in the cage. The Sean Brady fight wasn't a good look for him. The Daniel Rodriguez was okay. He went to the wrestling. He showed some high fight IQ in that fight. And the Curtis fight was okay. But I don't know. I'm not really crazy about who Gastelum is these days. He's not going out there and knocking dudes out like he used to, right? You think about what he used to do to these legends of the game, like Michael Bisping, which he hurt him so badly, the Tim Kennedy KO, all right? Or around that time early in his career, he just was so nasty with his boxing, the way he would move in and out with that southpaw stance. He was undersized and he would still hurt these guys. And I just think that his career, it never lived up to what it could have been, right? The highlight of his career was an Israel Adesanya championship loss. And we'll still respect what he's done in the cage, but what sense of urgency is he going to come into this fight with? I don't know. I really don't know. And I do think that Dustin will come extremely motivated, but at the end of the day, Gastelum is still the superior fighter. Okay. You run the tape back and you know who these two fighters are. Gastelum is going to be much more fluid in there. If Dustin somehow gets on top of Kelvin a little bit at times in this fight, I don't think that he'll be able to hold him down. Kelvin will get right back up to his feet and maybe even see Kelvin solidifying some takedowns with his wrestling. And but where I think that Kelvin could really have success is as this fight gets ugly, Kelvin finally will end the fight. You know what I mean? If we see a knockout in this match, it's going to be due to Kelvin just ending things, as you see a lot of back and forth and then you just see a stamp put on it. Kelvin will have the ability to end this fight. Not to say that Dustin can't get some kind of wild finish. It's not out of the realm, but Kelvin has never been KO'd. I mean, this dude's chin is absolute granite, and I'm not going to fade his durability or his chin right now. We've seen him subbed, so maybe Dustin can kind of make things play out wildly and then find himself in a dominant position, taking a back or something and sinking a rear naked choke, but I just don't see that. I don't see that, and I think it's much more likely if we see a finish, it's by Gastelum, and if this fight goes to the judges' scorecards, it's still more likely going to be Gastelum getting his hand raised. So yes, I am taking KG here. I just think that you have to. That's just a more responsible pick. You take a look at the betting odds, though. I mean, there could be something to talk about here. Maybe you want to target KG to win this fight inside the distance to get this line to come down. Where he's at right now, up around being a minus 280 favorite. I don't see a ton of value on it. I mean, based off the fact that I think that this fight can get a little crazy and a little wild. And Dustin is just he's a wild horse, man. He's a wild horse, and he looks to go out on his shield, but he goes out there and he looks to pull off the upset on these fighters. So I don't know if he could do that against KG, but from a betting perspective, you take a look at the odds, and I mean, right now you can grab Dustin as high as like a plus 220. I mean, really, part of me wants to say that that's where the value lies, as far as him being the dog, and maybe he proves to have a little bit more hustle in him, and he could take a decision. Right? It's not like there has to be an ending in this fight. If Kelvin is a little lackluster in there and he's patient, he's too patient, maybe he gives away 2 rounds. And Dustin's the more active fighter. Okay, so I will say that there's more value in the dog here, but I have KG winning this fight. And if we see that finish, if we see a finish, which I think we very much could, KG gets the KO here. Jared Gordon gets a real solid matchup here against Rafa Garcia, as Gordon looks to build off that knockout victory he just had over Thiago Moises. Yes, Gordon just turned 37 years old, but I think he has a lot left to offer the game. You see he's hustling hard. He's always putting in that work. He's been training over at Team Killcliff FC, which you guys know there's so many bodies over there. And you have to understand Gordon's background, right? We all know his backstory. I don't need to dive too much into it, but the reason why I bring it up is because his type of personality, it's going to lead to him not losing that dedication. This is the type of fighter that still lives and breathes fighting. I truly believe that. He's addicted to the fight game, and he's very tough. He's very mentally tough, and I don't think that you're going to see that steep decline here as he's hitting his late 30s as much as you may see from other fighters. Okay, I think that he still has a lot left to offer the fight game, and quite simply, I think that he's the superior fighter over Garcia anywhere this fight goes. I think he's the better striker, the better grappler. Okay, now maybe the one thing you could say that Garcia is a little better at is his durability. Okay, I'd give you that. But even then, Garcia is not a knockout artist, to say the least. He has 1 documented KO out of his 17 victories. All right, he's not a threat there. And you could say, yeah, Gordon's been KO'd 4 times. We've seen him hurt pretty bad, but he's been battling high level fighters. And you got to go all the way back to like 2019 for the last time that he was KO'd, and that was against Charles Du Bronx Oliveira, right? And that took place in the first round. He was knocked out recently before that against Joaquim Silva and Diego Ferreira, right? So yes, there were durability issues with him in that regard, but and you could also mention the Jeff Lentz KO that took place in 2015. That was very early in his career. That was a long time ago. But since all these losses, it's been so long since we've seen him hurt in that fashion. And it seems like he's figured something out defensively. And I'm sure it has something to do with all the high level fighters that he surrounds himself with. Now, even with that being said, we know how the fight game works. All right. Getting older, no matter how much training you're putting in, I mean, yeah, you can sharpen up a little bit more defensively, but getting older and having more fights under your belt will and should translate to you being a little bit more susceptible to be KO'd. But even then, this is Rafa Garcia we're talking about. I don't see him landing that KO. I just don't see it. I don't see him out hustling Gordon with his wrestling. And I'm going to cut to the chase here. I think that this is Gordon's fight. I think this is Gordon's fight all day. This is one of my more confident picks on the card. I want to talk more about, can Gordon get a finish here? All right. Because you saw the energy that he just brought into his last fight, getting that finish over Thiago Moises. And because we have seen Garcia finished before, and matter of fact, recently, when you think about what Grant Dawson just did to him, where he got the TKO finish down on the mat, that was in the second round. That was in his prior fight before he went out there and snuck off a decision against, you want to talk about an older fighter, where he snuck off that decision against Vince Pichel. I had that fight 29-28 for Garcia, but that was a fight that he was supposed to go out there and just shine. He was supposed to look really good, and I thought that kind of showed where he's at. And overall, you take a step back and you look at his work, and I think that his level of ability is much more transparent. You see where he's at. Okay, he's kicked his career off going 0-2 against Nasrat Haqparast, who's a good fighter, and then losing to Chris Grutzmacher. But even the Natan Levy fight, which I'm not that high on Levy, that fight was very competitive. All right, Jesse Ronson, respect to Ronson, but he was off and on PEDs throughout the years, and he was a fighter that really never could cut it in the UFC. Okay, give him the credit for the sub there, but Clay Guida and Mahashate, I mean, there's just not a lot to talk about when you're talking Rafa Garcia. And when you're talking Jeff Gordon, he has had some big moments in the cage, and this should be another big one for him. All right, do I think that he gets the knockout? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say he wins a decision, but I think that he looks very good doing it, and I think he lands damage throughout this fight. I think that this should be a pretty entertaining one due to the fact that Gordon's going to be pressing and just throwing his more fluid combinations on the feet. Remember what he did to Patty. That was a fight that the vast majority of us had him winning. In fact, he won that fight. Okay, you saw the work that he showcased with his striking. He's a very fluid kickboxer. He's tough. He's stout. He has good grappling, and he's a good mixed martial artist. And I'll say this real quick too. I had the pleasure of meeting him at a Titan FC event back in the day, years ago, and I was having a good time. I was having a really good time. It was a good night for me. I'll say that much. If you guys know what I'm saying, I had some drinks, and you guys know everything that Gordon stands for and some of the battles he had, which me having a good time had nothing to do with him. I bumped into him as I was out partying for some fights with some friends, and he couldn't have been more of a pleasure to talk with. And he didn't care that I had a big old tall boy in my hand and I was probably slurring a little bit, you know what I mean, having a good time as the main event was creeping up. He could care less. Okay, he was a pleasure to talk to. All right, he wasn't looking to chat it up quickly and then walk away. I mean, he's there to conversate with you. He's a great dude. He really is a great dude. So everything that he stands for, all that stuff that he talks about trying to help people better their lives, people that struggle with addiction, I believe it 100%. Right, 10 times. I mean, this is a solid dude. So you got to really only wish for the best for him when he's in there. He's one of the good ones, and I think this is going to be a good night for him. All right, we take a look at the odds here. Gordon is right around a -300. That's what you're seeing consistently on these books. So he's a big favorite, and you guys can guess how I feel about that. I think it's more than warranted. He's the superior fighter here, and you don't have too much risk on the back end. Right? I don't expect to see that shocking upset. The KO, I don't think the KO is going to be there, and I don't think Rafa Garcia's pulling off a sub. Don't see that happening, and I don't think that Garcia is going to out hustle Gordon using his wrestling. So quite simply, give me Gordon to win this fight, and I'll say that he wins a decision. I'll say that Garcia does survive some of the damage that Gordon will put his way. Now, with the fluctuation of opponents, David Martinez gets a massive step up in competition as he was supposed to be facing off against Quang Lee, but when Raul Rosas Jr. withdrew from the event, they needed David to step up and take on Rob Font. So you get a different stylistic matchup for both fighters to an extent, if you will, more so on the Rob Font side, because Raul Rosas Jr. probably was going to have a lot of success using his grappling against him. David Martinez is more of a striking-based fighter, so that does play in to what Rob Font wants to do here. Rob Font wants to go out there and throw down on the feet. Martinez now gets a much higher caliber striker, a much high caliber boxer at that, which just for a stylistic comparison, Quang Lee has some striking abilities, but he likes to mix in the kicking game much more so and likes to intertwine his grappling. All right, so Rob Font is a different type of threat. We'll see how Martinez adjusts to that. And most importantly, again, though, Rob Font's just a much higher level fighter. All right, David Martinez has only had one UFC fight, right? He had the victory on Dana White's Contender Series where he was signed, becoming the first ever, or being part of the first ever brother-sister combination with his sister, Melissa Martinez. He then comes into the UFC and had a spectacular finish over Simon Oliveira, where he finished him in the first round. He hit him with that counter right. And I want to focus in on that knockout that he had there because he is a patient fighter at times. Okay, he doesn't mind to be the counter striker, which Rob Font's going to be the aggressor in this fight. In my opinion, you're going to see Rob Font come out like he always does, marching forward, looking to push the pace on you, using his boxing skills. And I think that Martinez is going to have ample opportunities to land another power counter strike. All right. I'll say this too. I like the footwork and the movement of Martinez in space. I think that he could have success there if he wants to try to avoid that type of fight. You could see him circle quite a bit, but Rob Font will be on him. But Martinez moves very well, and he has more of a diverse attack offensively with his striking. He has a solid kicking game. I've seen him go out there and head kick dudes. Okay, so don't be surprised if that head kick gets up there on Font. I'm just saying that. Font has never been KO'd, but we have seen him take a lot of damage. All right, he doesn't mind eating strikes to try to land on you. We've seen him hurt. We've seen him wobbled before. He's 38 years old. It's not out of the realm we see him get KO'd here. All right, I'm not looking at him as a fighter like early on in the card. I'm talking about Kelvin Gastelum, KG. He's never been KO'd. I mean, he's a 33-year-old fighter that I have more confidence in that sense. Rob Font, I would not be surprised if we see him run into his first ever KO. Okay, besides that, we know Rob Font has major issues with his defensive wrestling. We see him taken down all the time. It costs him fights all the time against the higher level opponents. Is Martinez going to be that? I don't think that you could really confidently say that based on the tape that you could pull up. We've never seen him in there against a fighter on this level and really have seen him go that route. So you can't say that confidently, but that's still something that you have to pay attention to because that's a deficiency that Font has in his game. So you wouldn't be shocked if you see more development and you see Martinez show some ability there. But let's just real quick look at some of the victories that he's had as of recently. When you're talking Rob Font, the Matsumoto victory, I'll give him credit for showing up and making that fight competitive, but I thought that he dropped it. I thought that he should have taken an L there. He had his moments, but I thought Matsumoto really locked up 2 of the 3 rounds, although it was close. All right, and he was taken down later in that fight and throughout the fight, and that was the difference for me. But Matsumoto also landed on him. He hit him with the jab at one point in time where he hurt him. Okay, Kyler Phillips, he went out there and showed up against Kyler Phillips. I'll give him some credit there. But even then, as talented as Kyler is, we know he has some deficiencies in his game, and that played right into what Font does well. Right, we've seen Phillips slow down and blow fights like that multiple times. So take that one for what you will. I still want to give him credit. I just don't want to completely overlook these performances. But, I'm just setting up the point that I think that Martinez is the side to be on here, especially as we get over to the betting odds. He's going to be the underdog. I think that this is a young kid you got to keep an eye on. He has a high fight IQ. We know he's very intelligent, even outside of just fighting. But this is a fighter that has a little bit of an it factor to me. And I really just like the movement that he displays. He's very light on his feet, and he has a more diverse offensive attack with his striking, mixing in the kicking game and all that. And I think his movement will work out very well. And I also like, I was about to say love. I guess I could say love. I love having the fighter that has an age advantage like this. Okay, because it is an age advantage. All right, I look at it like that, and statistically, it's kind of proven to be the case. Rob Font in this division, right, in the bantamweight division, he is 38 years old, while Martinez is 27. All right, highlighted that this is in the 135 weight class. I think that that helps Martinez. Yeah, Font will have an experience advantage and all that, but more importantly, the movement, the durability, the quickness, the damage of Martinez is gonna play into effect here, in my opinion. And I'm picking the dog here, as I really been fading Font uh, often for whatever reason. I just seem to never be on the Font side, and it's paid off for me throughout the years. But as of recently, it kind of bit me a couple times. But and I was on him against Cody Garbrandt. I mean, that was a no brainer. So we did pick him there where he came through. But I'm not on him here. I'm not on him here. I'm gonna say that Martinez gets him, and this could be the beginning of the demise of Font. We'll see. I hate to put that kind of energy on him. It's nothing personal. It's just kind of what I'm seeing here with his fighting style. Um, the UFC wants to keep matching him up with these youngsters. Uh, so they're giving him something there, but if he gets matched up against a certain kind of opponent, he's going to be at a real disadvantage. The the wrestling defense is very bad, and he walks through a lot of damage, and he's old, so it's going to catch up with him. Give me Martinez to win this fight. I'm going to give Font the credit to say that this fight goes to a decision, but I want to say the knockout is live. It is live. We may see Rob Font knocked out for the first time, but I feel a little bit more confident saying that the fight plays out more similarly to what we saw on DWCS against Xavier Franklin, where you just see Martinez using his footwork, landing damage, just kind of mixing things up a bit, and he'll be the superior fighter in there. So I'll pick him to win it by a decision. If you guys want the official targets that I'll have for this card, you guys can reach out to me through email or shoot me a DM through my social media. I'll give you further details there. I got a couple options for you if you want my targets. And we are on absolute fire. First off, the work that I've been putting in on Dana White's Contender Series has been crazy. All right, we have those events taking place every Tuesday, and we come off a clean sweep for UFC Paris. So the ball is rolling right now. If you guys are interested, you guys can reach out to me for sure. And that takes us to the main event, where we have the last of the fighting nerds. As far as the Mount Rushmore of that gym taking losses inside the UFC, Gene Silva is the last man to remain undefeated inside the octagon. We've recently just saw Bahalo and Rufi take losses at UFC Paris. And of course, Carlos Pratis took a loss not too long ago as well. Now, that doesn't mean that all of those fighters aren't extremely high level, because I think that they are. I'm not turning my back on them, right? They're losing high level matches. Gene Silva, to me, though, he may end up being the most well-rounded fighter out of the gym. Time will tell. Maybe it's Pratis, because Pratis, as his grappling comes around him, he's pretty dangerous. And it's not to say that Gene Silva is the most accomplished grappler, but I like his anti-grappling. I like his takedown defense. He's obviously a big step ahead of a Rufi. We saw that on full display. And I think that Gene Silva, when you look at his striking mixed with his grappling, is a little bit better than Kaio's. Kaio's a good striker, but he's more of a grappler when you're talking about him facing the elite fighters. He needs to refine his striking. We saw Imavov really put a clinic on him. And Silva is a different animal, especially when you mix in to play the power that he possesses. He's just so damn dangerous, right? He has 11 knockouts out of his 16 victories, and he's really putting it together. He's just 28 years old as well, so you expect to see that continued growth coming from him. He just went out there and outclassed Bryce Mitchell. Of course, I was there for that when I saw how he just went out there and had the perfect defense for the grappling of Mitchell. He stifled and defended that, and that's an important factor to look at in this matchup, because Lopes has good jiu-jitsu, but he doesn't really have solid wrestling. I don't think he's going to be able to get this fight down to the mat. I think that this is going to be more of a striking affair. I think that Gene's going to be able to keep this fight standing, and Lopes has power. He's aggressive there, but I think that Silva is even more dangerous as far as his power goes, and I think that he even is a little bit more fluid overall. You take a quick look at some of the work that Silva's been doing, man. What he did to Melsek Bagdasarian was nasty. The knockout over Dober, the knockout over Charles Jourdain, the knockout over Weston Wilson. It's a lower level fighter, but the way he went out there and finished him in the first round, it's exactly what he should have done. The Kevin Vallejos fight. That one has aged very well. Vallejos is an absolute stud. And I've talked about that fight before, so I won't go on too much about it. But that was a matchup between two fighters that were very young at that time. And looking back at it, I mean, those are two fighters that are going to be towards the top of this division for a long time to come. And he got the better of Vallejos, right? He, at the end of the day, he did get the better of Vallejos, and Silva was the dog in that fight. So, and he's an absolute dog in the cage in general. He brings in that spirit, that energy, and I think he's going to go out here and he's going to expect to be the hammer over Lopes. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. If we see a knockout in this fight, I think that it is much more likely that it's Silva that puts Lopes out. If Lopes is going to have success in this fight, it's got to be wild. It's got to be chaotic. And maybe he can try to expose Gene a little bit, but I just don't see it. I don't see it being the case. You look at the Volkanovski fight, right? They fought on that same event. He hurt Volkanovski at one point in time, but all in all, we saw that Volkanovski was able to string the combinations and use the footwork to be a step ahead of him. And I don't see any reason why if Silva wants to go that route, he can't do that as well. All right. So, I mean, you look at some of the success that Lopes has had, not to really, try to paint him in a bad picture. He's a good fighter, but, I don't know how good he really is. I think that he's been a little overhyped. I do. I think he's been a little overhyped, and it was based on the fact that he came in on short notice against Movsar. He overperformed there. And I mean, you want to take a look at his winning streak, uh, the Ortega victory. I mean, you want to go on about that. I mean, the Dan Ige fight was actually kind of close, if you guys remember. And Ige took that fight on minutes short notice. He knocked out Sadiq Yusuf, Pat Sabatini, and he submitted Gavin Tucker. So, I mean, it wasn't that long back that he wasn't taking losses to fighters like Nate Richardson. And he had a loss against Joe Anderson Brito on DWCS. If you remember, he came up short there. So, I mean, I don't want to make it seem like I'm really going in too hard on him, but I think that Gene Silva is the superior talent here. I think that Gene Silva is very likely going to get that gold strap across his waist right now. I mean, if you were to match him up with Volkanovski, I think Gene Silva, not only does he defeat him, I think he knocks Volkanovski out. Volkanovski has slowed down. He's aged. His durability isn't there, and you would see Silva knock him out similarly to what we saw Topuria do to him. Right? Even Lopes had that moment on him, but Silva would find him and finish him in that fight. I'll take him over the Englishman, Lerone Murphy, as well. I think that this may be Silva's division to come. All right. I think he may take this division over. We'll see who works their way up to him. But right now, you match him up with the top guys in this division. And I think that this is Gene Silva's division to come. So obviously, I have him winning this fight. Is he going to get a KO? Because he is always live to get a KO, and he's going to have 25 minutes to find that here. You want to go back to Lopes's lone KO loss, right? He's only been KO'd once, and that was a long time ago, back in 2018. All right, so it's been a long time. He's tough. He's durable. I'm going to give him the credit here, and I'll say that he makes it to the final bell. I think that he'll take some real damage. But I think that actually he can make it to the final bell here. But the KO's live, but I will side with Gene Silva winning a decision, just landing a lot of damage, solidifying rounds. I'm going to say Lopes takes one round where Silva may kind of take a round off and kind of pace himself a bit, and you'll see Lopes kind of step on the gas and score some points. But I don't think that Lopes is going to find a finish here. Lopes has a lot of submission victories, right? 10 submission victories. He has skills down in the mat, as I said earlier. I just don't think that he'll consistently be able to get this fight down to the mat. Maybe in the championship rounds, he can get it there and put himself in a position to end the fight. I'll just mention that, but I have Silva winning this fight via decision. And we take a look at the odds, and Gene Silva's a big-time favorite. Okay, he opened up here as a minus 210, and he's now at minus 270. We've seen some action come in on him here. I've seen him on some other books opening up as high as like a minus 300, and then that line coming down to like minus 250, 260. So depending on what book you have, we've seen different movement. But Silva is around a minus 260 favorite right now. Okay. I still like Silva where this line is. I like Silva all the way up to like a minus 310, 320. Right. I have confidence in him getting the job done here. I'm all in on the Gene Silva train. All right. I'm all in. And I have been for a while. Right. I going into that last fight, I was hoping maybe Bryce could have made it competitive. I was going there. I was watching the fight live. I wanted to see some fun action. Bryce is a character. I was hoping to see something wild happen, but we all knew deep down that that was a bad matchup for Bryce there. And also in retrospect now we were able to see that fight, and that was another feather in Silva's cap that he was able to stifle the grappling the way that he did. Now we even have that on paper, on video, so you give him even more credit there, and he's a beast. He wins this fight.